very different. So if you've created this very beautiful PDF and now you'd like to create a web version of it, well, it's just not straightforward at all. So the idea behind Markdown, and Markdown, of course, is a play with a markup language. They called it Markdown because it's a very simplified markup language. It's dumbed down, if you want. It's the philosophy of Markdown is to have really a minimalist markup language that would remove all of this visual clutter, all of that complexity, so that it would be super easy to learn, and also super easy to read the raw document without having all this formatting clutter in the way. And Markdown files are just text files like the other files, and they take a .md extension. A nice thing about Markdown is that despite its simplicity, when it was created, it was mostly created for HTML, and it could be rendered into some fairly limited but still nice HTML. So you could transform Markdown into HTML. And a lot of sites do implement Markdown more and more, actually, because Markdown has really exploded in popularity. So if you use GitHub, for instance, GitHub is capable of rendering Markdown into HTML. Lots of forums and lots of sites allow you to use some Markdown syntax to produce nice formatted HTML snippets. So that's the basic Markdown. And if you want to see the initial Markdown project, you can explore this. Like, this is the first Markdown, if you want. And here is a list of all applications that support Markdown. Now, Pandoc is a free and open source markup format converter. It's a fantastic tool that allows you to transform things between some markup formats. It doesn't convert absolutely everything, but it converts from one markup to another one pretty well. And Pandoc supports an extended Markdown syntax. So in this extended Markdown syntax, on top of the very basic and fairly limited Markdown that was initially created and that could only work to export into HTML, you have a lot more options for a lot better formatting that also allows to create PDFs and books and websites and Word documents, not just HTML. And it's way more performant while still maintaining a very easy and very easily readable syntax. So the little example document that would look like this in LaTeX and that in HTML, the exact same document in this extended Markdown syntax looks like this. So in the extended Pandoc's Markdown syntax. So that's a lot easier. There are still some elements of metadata, those three little dash here, the title here, the little hashtag here. There's still some metadata, but it's a lot more friendly. It's a lot easier to read. So that's Markdown. Now, I also would like to say a little word about literate programming. So literate programming, it's a fairly old concept. It was introduced in 1984. It's this idea that you can combine code, that is instructions for the machine, and text for human consumption into a nice, into a single document where you can intertwine very nicely the code and the human content. So of course, you can always add comments in the code, but this goes way beyond adding a few comments. yes, you can and you should add comments in your code to document what this function, this line, this bit of code does, but you wouldn't write your entire PhD thesis in code just by adding comments to it. Literate programming is really this idea that it's embedded in a way that could produce a book, a website, your thesis, anything that contains both text and code and the output of that code. So while the concept is fairly old, it wasn't very popular because there weren't like really great tools for a long time. There were some old tools tried here and there, but nothing really took off until fairly recently. Now, R Markdown has really implemented this concept beautifully. Another tool that has implemented this concept very nicely more recently are Jupyter notebooks. Jupyter notebooks are interactive notebooks where you can intertwine some code cells of R, Python, or Julia, and some Markdown cells that will be rendered as text. And you can that way create a literate programming document. But now, very recently, it's a really new tool. There is this Quarto tool that is developed by the POSIT, so the formerly RStudio company. It is free and open source. And it's really, I think, pushes this literate programming to yet a new level. So it doesn't invent any new methodology. It actually makes use of tools that already existed. It uses Pandoc, that free and open source software that allows to transform a Markdown document in a Word document, for instance, or in a PDF. It uses R Markdown for R, and it uses Jupyter for other languages such as Python and Julia. So they took some tools that were pre-existing, but they managed to create a nice software that does things in a very nice way with these tools, and they added and keep adding tons of new functionality on it. So how it works, you create, instead of creating a Markdown file, so a .md file, or an R Markdown file, which was a .rmd file, you create a Quarto Markdown file, so a .qmd file. And this Markdown file contains some Markdown and some code blocks. We'll look at the syntax later. And in the case of Julia or Python, this QMD file is transformed into Markdown by Jupyter. So the same engine that runs Jupyter Notebook will, thanks to the Python kernel or Julia kernel, execute your Python or Julia code blocks, and will turn the QMD into an MD file that will have all of the code blocks that you wish to execute, executed, all of the figures that you want to print, printed, and etc. And from there on, since it's a classic Markdown document, you can render your Markdown document, thanks to Pandoc, into absolutely anything you want. A book, a website, a web page, a PDF, a Word document, etc., etc. For R, because there is the R Markdown engine that is actually even nicer than Jupyter, might as well make use of it. So it uses a different engine with a neat R package, which is the package that is run in the background when you use R Markdown. So with R, it's the same thing. You have a QMD file. The neat R package executes your R code blocks, the ones you want executed, because you don't have to execute all code. There's a ton of flexibility in how you want the execution to be done. And it creates a classic Markdown that then Pandoc renders into whatever format you want. Because the Jupyter is used here, you can also do it directly from Jupyter. So if you are familiar with Jupyter notebooks, if this is the tool that you are used to running. You can export directly from Quarto to you can export directly, thanks to Quarto, from your Jupyter notebook to any document, because this is actually a shorter path than you have here. And if you are used to using R in RStudio, you can use Quarto directly in RStudio. RStudio and Quarto are developed by the same company, so they integrate perfectly well with each other. So in the RStudio IDE, there is an option that you can tick to export to Quarto, and then you can access Quarto directly from RStudio. It's very well integrated. Now, I wanted this workshop to be as open as possible. So I didn't want to use RStudio because some of you might not be used to R and RStudio, and I didn't want to use it from a Jupyter notebook because some of you might not use Jupyter notebooks. I wanted to use it in its more raw form, which is actually the form that I personally prefer, which is to go directly from QMD text files into the output document. So we will go directly from text files to the output, but just remember that you can run it in your usual IDE if your workflow involves Jupyter notebooks or RStudio. Now, you should have received an email with these installation instructions before coming. If you haven't installed things, just watch, and you can go back to the workshop material later on and try things at your own pace. If you have already installed things, then that's fantastic, and you can try to follow along. And that way, if you run into issues, I will help you and we'll discuss things. So what you should install depends on your usage. For instance, if you only use R, well, all you need is R and the R Markdown package, and then, of course, Quarto. If you use Python, you want Quarto, of course, but then you want Python and Jupyter or Jupyter Lab, since the Python will use the Jupyter engine. If you use Julia, you want Quarto and Julia and the iJulia package, which is the Julia kernel for Jupyter. And you might want to also install the revise package that will make things, will give you additional functionality, but you don't have to. And if you plan on using Quarto with all languages, then of course you can install everything. The little example that I will use today uses R, but if it's a very small example, if you are using Python, for instance, and you want to follow along, just write some Python code instead of R code in the example, and so use your favorite language today. Okay, so if you have everything installed, let's talk a little bit about syntax. So the syntax is the extended pandoc, the extended Markdown syntax of pandoc, since pandoc is the engine that will render the Markdown file into your favorite output. So you have a front matter at the start. The front matter is some code at the top of a document that gives some information for the rest of the document. So the front matter is always between those that pair of three little hyphens. And in that front matter, so in between that pair of hyphens, you have the front matter, the metadata, sorry, for the document. So you have things, for instance, like the title of your document, the author, very important, the output format. And then you can have a ton of additional information. You can have the date, you can have custom options for the various formats. So whether you want to use a particular CSS for an HTML output, whether you want a table of content or not, the particular version of Jupyter you want to use, all sorts of additional functions. So in its simplest form, you need the title and the format, but you can add a ton of additional customization. Now, the one reference page you will want to keep open when you get started really is this page from the Quarto website. This is really the guide with all of the links for everything. So, for instance, in the example that we will work on together today, we will try to create an HTML page. So you would go into document. You can see that you have various types of documents. For presentations, the documents are here. If you want to export to a PDF or a Beamer presentation, or Reveal.js for HTML, etc. If you want to create a website. So this is a great reference page to access all of the documentation. But today we will create an HTML document. So we will follow the information that is on this page. Are there any questions so far? Oh, and one thing that I didn't mention is that the front matter is written in a format called YAML. So this is why it is formatted in this way, and the indentation are important. I'm not sure how to pronounce the language, so YAML, however it's pronounced, is one of the languages such as Python for which the indentation is not just for readability, it has a programming meaning. So you have to be careful to respect the indentation. So as I mentioned, it uses Pandox extended Markdown. So you could go to the actual Pandox website, and Pandox website has a section on Markdown, but it's really poorly written. It's not very well formatted, and it's kind of messy. So I encourage instead, I find it much more user-friendly to go on the Markdown page of Quarto to get information on all of the syntax for this extended version of Markdown. So for instance, italics are between stars, bold between pairs of stars, there's superscript, subscript, strike through, inline code, headings, images, URLs, etc., etc. Tables, diagrams. So this is your syntax reference for the text. Now, in addition to the text, the whole idea behind literate programming is that usually there's some code in there as well. And so, because otherwise, if you just write text, if you have no code, then there's no point to use Quarto. You can just use the extended version of Markdown and then use Pandox to export to whatever format. But Quarto, in addition to that, allows to render code using either the Jupyter or the knitr engines. So often you'll have code blocks. And those code blocks follow the following syntax. You have triplets of backticks with the language name between curly braces as an opening of the code block, and triplets of backticks to close the code block. If you add a little dot before the language, you will get syntax highlighting of the code block, but the code will not be run. So if you just want to display some code with the proper syntax highlighting of the language, this is what you will want to use. If you remove the dot, however, the code will actually be run, and you'll get an output. And then there is this little symbol, hashtag, and then the pipe symbol with the name of a function and then the value of an option. And that allows you to customize your code block. For instance, you can decide to hide the code block if you just want the output, or you can add all sorts of customization to your code block. So that's the general syntax. Now, you use this syntax in a text file and you have this .qmd file. What do you do with it? Well, this is where you have to run Quarto. So again, you can run it directly in Jupyter Notebook or in RStudio, but if you want to use it directly from the command line from a text file, there are two functions. There's Quarto render that will render the document. So Quarto render and then the path of your file will directly create the output you wanted. Or there is Quarto preview, and Quarto preview and then the path for your file will automatically pop open a tab in your browser, and you will see live as you work on your document, the rendering of the document. And this is what we will use today so that we can, as we play and add some content into our file, we will see how it is being rendered. Now, before you want to publish something, it's good just to be safe to render, to make sure, particularly if you have a whole website, you want to make sure that everything is rendered, not just things you have previewed. So before publication, Quarto render is nice to run. Okay, so let's get started. So use the text editor of your choice. Nano is installed on most systems, but you can use Emacs, you can use Sublime Text, use anything you want to create a new text file, and we will call it test.qmd. So I will use Emacs, but use and I will change the font. Okay, great. Okay, so this is my text file, and I will create my document. So give me just a sec, and do it on your end as well. Okay. So okay, so I have an empty file called test.qmd in a text editor. So yeah, create however way you're familiar with, you're used to, using whatever tool you're used to, create a text file. It has to be a text editor because we need raw text. So don't use something like Word, for instance, but any text editor will work. And then in this, the only thing that we need to get started is a minimal front matter with a title and a format. So for title, let's call our document test web page, and the format, I decided to use HTML for this demo. So you can copy this front matter and paste it into, paste it into your new test.qmd file, and then you save it. Now, we will run Quarto preview on it. So open a terminal. Okay, open a terminal like if you're on macOS, open the application called Terminal. If you are using Windows, you can use Command or PowerShell or Git Bash, or I think it would work on any of these terminal. And you have to cd to go to the location of your file. So my file is in this directory. So if I print ls, I have my test.qmd file. So great, perfect. And from there, I will run Quarto preview test.qmd to create a preview. So you get some output, like you see what's going on. So Pandoc is running the stuff, blah, and automatically it opened in my browser the output. So the format is HTML, so this is a web page. The title is test web page. Indeed, we have test web page. So great. Are there any questions on how to get this started? Do unmute yourself or type in the Slack channel if you're having any issues getting this setup started. You should see, so you should have a text editor with a test.qmd file open. You should have on some shell, terminal, whatever command line tool you use, Quarto preview, and then the path of your file, or if you have cd'd into the location of your file, Quarto preview, and then the file. And that should pop open the rendered output in your browser. Are there people who are having issues? No? Okay, well, hopefully everybody is following along. So below, I have put some examples for Reveal.js, HTML, all sorts of things, but for today, we'll just build it from scratch together. So now we need to add some content into our site. So in Markdown, the headers are with hashtags. It is expected by Quarto for the reason becomes obvious when you start building books or websites. It is better to start with the second level of header. So this is our first section, for instance. So if I type this, the minute I save it, I can see that there's some stuff happening in the Quarto preview that is running here, and the first section got added to my site. Now I can add some content, and I save, and the content is added. It can be in italic, bold, etc. Are things working for everyone? Okay, I can add some stuff to the front matter too. For instance, I can add that I am the author for it. I'm just going to put my first name. Okay, I can add my institution. I think it's institute. I think that's the right, yeah. So, okay, so now we know it's a document from SFU. I could add the date. So today's date, we're in 2023, we're in February, and we're the 16th. Okay, great. I can add I could customize the date. I could add all sorts of things. If you want to see the full possibilities of what can be done, again, navigate to the HTML things, and you will see that there are very many options you can play with. Now we can have a subsection. So I'm going up one level. So I'm using 3 hashtags instead of 2. This is a subsection. And by adding a path to some CSS file in the metadata and the front matter, you can customize the your website however you want. This is the default rendering, but if you don't like it, if you want to have the font bigger or the first level of header in capital letter or in a certain color or whatever. You can customize absolutely anything you want by adding a CSS file with all of your customization. And as a side little note, actually, this entire website here is built with Quarto. So everything that you see on this site is built with this tool. So it can be fairly powerful and can really, you can make it as fancy as you wish to spend the time to do. Let's add some code. So I'm going to demo things with R, but you can use Python or Julia if you would like. So a code block does triplets of backticks and then between curly braces, the name of the language. So this is going to be an R code block. So I can write some extremely fancy code like this. And you can see that the code block appears and it gets executed. Now, if I don't want to execute the code, if I only wanted to show the code with the syntax highlighting, I can simply add a little dot between the name of a language and then the code block just isn't executed. But let's execute it. Are there any questions? Everything is extremely quiet, so I hope people are following along, but if you have issues getting started or if you have any question, by all means, please do say so.
I have a simple question.
Yes, please.
Am I assuming correctly that like you've put R there to have an R block, but could you put in another block with another language in the same?
Not in the same document.
No, not in the same document. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that miraculous.
Yeah. So in the same way that Jupyter notebooks cannot accept multiple documents,
right?
You can have, if you create a website, different pages running different languages, but not in the same document.
Okay.
If you really wanted to have multiple languages in one document, you would have to use some tricks because you can run some language from inside another language, but you would have to use tricks. That said, realistically, what are you trying to create? If you are trying to write your thesis, for instance, it's very unlikely that in the same section, in the same part, you're going to be using a ton of different languages. Usually you're going to do all of your analysis in R or in Python, for instance. Yeah. If you create a web page for a workshop, for instance, it's going to be in one language. It's very rare when we do workshops in which we use a bunch of languages. Okay. Yes. Well, Bash and Python, that's totally fine, Alex, because you can totally run Bash in any of these documents. So when I say a single language, it's a single programming language. But in the same fashion that Jupyter Notebooks and our Markdown can run Bash, you can totally run Bash as well. So you can have multiple languages. One of them is a scripting language, yes. So if I run this, for instance, this is run. Oh, sorry, I didn't use the proper yeah, sorry. I didn't use the proper yeah, I have all sorts of little shortcuts and I use the wrong one. So if I put Bash, yeah, like this is run. This will do exactly what Jupyter Notebooks do. It's going to run a Bash subshell within the document. So yeah, so in that case, Alex, this does work, but I couldn't have a Python block here.
And Karen commented in the Zoom chat, so this isn't as awesome as R Markdown, right? Because R Markdown
no, it is exactly the same. Our Markdown has some tricks under the hood to run multiple languages. They use some tricks, so it does the same thing. It has 100% of the R Markdown functionality and more. So everything you can do in R Markdown, you can do it in Quarto. The reason R Markdown can run several languages is because they, under the hood, they do some tricks to have it work. Yeah, so you could use it in the same fashion. Like, yeah, R Markdown, like you can run Python in R, for instance, and that's what they do. But technically speaking, it runs a single engine per document. Let's try some plot. R comes with a number of data sets pre-installed. One of them is cars. So actually we can, well, let me comment that. Let's, for instance, explore what the cars data set is, in case you are not familiar with it. So cars is one of those data sets that comes with R, and it gives, I think it's the distance it takes to stop when you are running at a certain speed. So this is the cars data set. The most basic way to plot in R is just to use the plot function. So this would be the basic plot. Now, this is a bit basic. Maybe we want to add some title. I don't remember. I never remember any of the. I have little shortcuts for everything. So give me a sec. I have to refresh my memory on how to add a caption. Okay. So I have a little short here. Okay, so remember that this hashtag and then the pipe is the way to add options to a code block. So the option to add a caption is fig cap. That's what I couldn't remember. So let's call it braking distance at various speeds, for instance. Okay, so now I have a caption here. Now, maybe I want to have the caption not show up below here. Maybe I want to have it as a little in the margin. So for this, I can add the option in the code block, but if that's what I want for every single code block, instead of adding the same option at all the code blocks, might as well add it in the front matter. And I have to look again what it is, because I also don't remember. It is fig caption location is the name of the option, and the location that I want would be margin. So if I add this in the front matter, I have to pass it as a format of HTML. So like this. No, okay, well, apparently it doesn't work for HTML. It works for websites because I use it all the time, but not for HTML, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. So this is not convincing at all. Oh, or maybe it's because the, okay, sorry, my bad. So it was actually working, and it was probably working with a simpler syntax like that. The reason it looked like it wasn't working is because I have split my screen and I have increased my zoom a lot so that you can see. But if I remove, if I give more space to my website, we have moved the caption that was initially below in the margin. It was just like by squishing the website, the margin goes below. So so it is indeed in the margin. So yeah. So now anything that you put in the front matter applies to the entire document, but if you want something just for a particular code block, you put it in the code block. Now, maybe we have a ton of code and we're not interested in the code, we're interested in the output, because maybe it's not a thesis that we are creating, maybe it's some kind of report for someone, and what matters to the reader is the result. It's not all the code that got us to that result. So maybe we want to hide the code block and want just the output. So in that case, the little option is called echo false. So again, that's something that you can put for just one code block, or if you put it in the front matter for every single code block. So let's say I want to hide this particular input code, but I don't want to hide all of them, so I'm putting it in this particular block. If I run this, I keep the output, but now the block is hidden. I could have done it for all of them, but yeah. Are there other questions? Because we are slowly running out of time. I'm not sure what I could demo that would be useful, but
Karen had written in the Zoom chat, she tried writing a bash code in Quarto inside RStudio, but it needs Jupyter installed already. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, honestly, believe me, Quarto is much better than our Markdown. You were running this Quarto in RStudio, you mean?
That's right.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it might be. Because Quarto, I mean, it depends what you want to create. If you just want to run some bash, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because when you, yeah, right, yeah, I don't know. I don't use RStudio, so I'm not sure.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So you might have to install. I mean, you have to make sure you have the tools to have the things that you want to do run. Not that if you want to use a bash script without using Jupyter, there is a little trick. It's I give a lot of workshops, and so I built some workshops that only use bash, for instance, some Git workshop, and I want them to be run by the neatar engine. So my trick is to add an empty R block, and then that allows me to execute bash. It's a weird thing, but if at the top of your document, for instance, you have an empty R script like that, then you can have all of bash run and you won't need Jupyter. I didn't have to do that in this demo because I already had an R block, but otherwise you can have an empty R block, and it won't show because it's empty. So it doesn't affect the rendering at all, and it's a weird little trick that allows you to, so if you do that, it should work in RStudio. If you put an empty R block, you should be able to render bash scripts without installing Jupyter. Otherwise, you can also install Jupyter. Yeah.
We've almost run out of time. It's 4:52 by my count.
Yeah. So when you are done with the rendering, you can just press Ctrl+C. It will stop the rendering. So the local host that was running our rendering closes. And if instead you run Quarto render, instead of creating a preview, it will just render the final document. In this case, it won't make a difference because by previewing the document, we've already rendered it. But when you create much more complex things, such as like an entire website, it's safer to run the render first. And yeah, and just like you can do lots of things. Like this entire website is created with Quarto, and at the bottom you have a number of, so they're very minimalist. The Beamer presentation is ugly because I didn't add any customization, but you can see how you can output to PDF, to a Beamer PDF, to HTML, to a website. You have some little example snippets, and mostly thanks to this page, you have all the documentation to guide you through. So
great. Well, I think this has given us lots to get going and lots to dig into. So you did say that that site will be up. There's no time limit.
Yeah, that site is there to stay. So you can bookmark it for future reference. It will not go anywhere. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. Okay. Well, I think we probably have to wrap it up. Is that?
Sure. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you are using our Markdown, you will hear about Quarto more and more, because the Post-it company is writing blogs about it and putting it forth more and more. So you will hear increasingly about it. Like our Markdown, they decided to maintain it. It's so popular, so they will not take it down. They will maintain it to make sure it doesn't break, but they will not develop it any further. All new functionalities are added now to Quarto, not to our Markdown. So our Markdown is just maintained but stagnant.
Oh, that's really good to know. Yeah, thanks very much. Things do change awfully fast, but good to know what's the emerging front runner. So good. Everybody have a good rest of the day. If you're coming back tomorrow, enjoy yourselves. I won't be here, but look forward to getting links. There will be all the recordings will be available. In fact, I'll stop recording right now.